Mr. Dennis Tan.
Mr. Speaker, one of the first widely produced models of the battery-powered electric vehicle, the Nissan Leaf, was launched in 2010. Fated as a breakthrough model, the Leaf was considered one of the most efficient and user-friendly electric cars. A decade later, Singapore is beginning its journey towards electrification. In March this year, I spoke briefly on the need for greater electrification of our commercial goods fleet and expansion of charging infrastructure for such a fleet during the Committee of Supply debates. The Minister acknowledged that there are fewer viable cleaner energy solutions currently available for heavier goods vehicles. I am concerned that such goods vehicles may continue to be a significant contributor to our land transport emissions as a result. There is an important point to make here. Since the 2020 COVID pandemic, e-commerce and the accompanying last-mile deliveries have seen a surge in demand. The World Economic Forum estimated that last-mile delivery saw an increase in 25%, way up to 20% of the growth remaining post-pandemic. As I alluded to in March, with pre-pandemic growth in last-mile delivery increasing carbon emissions by 30% by 2030, a lack of supporting infrastructure to encourage electric vehicle adoption could have deleterious effects on our ability to reduce our emissions and meet our carbon-neutral goals as a country. We should bear in mind that we have a large number of commercial goods and heavy vehicles locally, as well as a large number of goods vehicles which come in from Malaysia on a daily basis. To that end, while the Ministry has focused on using the sticks of the Commercial Vehicle Emission Scheme, CVES, and the Early Turnover Scheme, ETS, to encourage the adoption of cleaner energy light goods vehicles locally, I will reiterate that a lack of widely available charging infrastructure, particularly for the brown goods delivery fleets, is a significant roadblock to our green goals. The Electric Vehicles Charging Bill, EVC Bill, is certainly a welcome step in the right direction. With to be stipulated requirements for charging points in buildings, this ensures that charging infrastructure is established to match the mandated increase in demand. As the number of charging points required is correlated with the purpose of the building, I urge the Minister to take a tailored approach to each building. A distribution hub which uses purely electric vehicles may be more likely to require more charging points compared to a residential block. I'd like to touch on two separate issues with the charging infrastructure, one for residential premises and one for industrial premises. Mr. Speaker, LTA has indicated that 12 charging points will be installed in 2,000 HDB car parks, with a total of 12,000 chargers to be installed by 2025. Subject to demand. The longer-term goal was to have 60,000 charging points island-wide by 2030. As I previously highlighted, an important measure in the deployment of these chargers is the siting and the number of chargers, with a critical mass needed to support charging and minimize queues for charging points. The EVC bill has taken a step down this path with a formula-based approach to determine the number of chargers required per building. As of end 2021, we had approximately 3,700 electric vehicles registered on the road, double the previous year's numbers. Moving forward, we should expect the numbers to increase exponentially. I wonder whether the Minister can share more details as to how the Ministry arrived at the formula that's been used to determine the number of charges which will be optimum for each car park. Evidently, some calculations have gone into determining that 12,000 charges might be necessary by 2025. If I assume that an average privately owned EV travels approximately 60 kilometers a day and has a range of approximately 300 kilometers, then the average driver would need to charge his... Can I say that again? If I assume that an average privately owned EV travels approximately 60 kilometers per hour each day and has a range of approximately 300 kilometers, then the average driver would need to charge his vehicle to full every 4 days. This could mean a significant scaling up of charging points would be necessary given the current trends. 12,000 chargers island-wide may not be wide enough if we are successful in encouraging EV adoption. Is the Minister able to share with the House how the LTA expects to keep up with a possible rising demand? And may I ask whether LTA is considering building charging points on a larger scale in advance of demand, perhaps even taking on the risk that there might be, in the short term, a little excess and underused capacity. My concern is that it will be harder to persuade more to convert to electric cars if they see that the charging facilities are insufficient. This is not even considering that the price of many EVs remain relatively expensive. There's also the possible issue that if more people convert to EVs and the EV car numbers were to go up ahead of the building of insufficient infrastructure, there may be a period of frustration for vehicle owners as they cope with insufficient facilities in their immediate vicinity. Still on EV charging for residential and public car parks, I have received feedback that there are owners who have parked their electric vehicles at parking lots with EV chargers without actually charging their cars. May I ask whether the government will take adequate measures to deter such acts at public car parks, instead of relying on public feedback through, say, the MSO? And if so, what would they be? Next, I would like to seek an update from the Minister on the progress of our condominiums, office and commercial buildings and other MCSDs on their adoption of EV chargers in their car parks, as their timely participation is also important in our country's EV conversion journey. I now move on to the topic of commercial and industrial usage of EVs. Mr. Speaker, direct government support to electrify a delivery fleet and direct government support to build charging infrastructure in industrial facilities like distribution hubs can send a powerful signal that we are serious and committed about leading carbon emission reduction across all segments of our land transport. I note that we are already on the CCS charging format. Several heavy goods vehicle offerings available globally are already built for this charging format. Largest of these vehicles are able to tow up to a GCWR of 40,000 kilograms. This is roughly equivalent to a single 40-foot ISO container. While an electric heavy vehicle range might understandably be shorter, say approximately 200 kilometers range on a single charge, government support will be a powerful incentive to modernize and green the domestic transport fleet. I'd like to know, how would the government ensure the timely electrification of all commercial goods and heavy vehicles? As a topic for discussion or consideration, would MOT even consider a more prescriptive approach, say legislating a requirement for a fleet to be completely electrified by a set date, and support fleet owners by dedicating public resources to building large-scale fast charging points at central areas such as the port and strategically placed distribution hubs? Similar to the point made for charging infrastructure for private vehicles, government funding for charging infrastructure will give industry stakeholders the assurance that the large-scale investment will not bankrupt their company or have too large an impact on their bottom line. Mr. Speaker, in March this year, the Minister for Environment and Water Resources, Mr. Grace, who highlighted how our investment in science and technology continue to unlock possibilities in Singapore's development. Specifically, she mentioned how R&D for new water and desalination increased Singapore's profile as a leading global hydro hub. I hope that our government has also been actively looking for similar R&D opportunities in areas relating to EVs and EVC technology, including charging facility, charging infrastructure, or even battery technology. This may help to not only enhance the development and use of better technology in our own electrification efforts locally, but it will also help Singapore in our journey towards a low-emission future. It may lead to new technologies which could be exported, giving a boost to the Singapore economy and creating new areas of growth in our manufacturing industry. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the shift towards higher adoption of electric vehicles and a low-emission economy is in motion, and I look forward to the further ramping up of all efforts to full electrification. I support the bill.